Washington is the largest shareholder in the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, giving it massive sway over the global economy.
These particular monetary institutions were enshrined after the Second World War, and they are very much tied up in this notion that with better commercial ties also comes more peace.
We were able to create a single international political and economic space in which economic and social and human development could proceed much more rapidly and far further than ever was the case before in history.
The second half of the 20th century was the most glorious period in human history ever. 3 billion people lifted out of abject poverty.
To some, the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 represented the end of history, the moment when the American democratic system would become the prevailing political and economic order in perpetuity.
There was this view when the Cold War ended that we were at the end of history, and the end of history was a path towards liberal economies and democracies. And there was a huge explosion of democracy across the globe.
The end of history is a phrase that was coined by Francis Fukuyama, essentially to mean that up until 1989 and the end of the Cold War, history was dominated by a series of ideological struggles.
What is often forgotten, though, is that Fukuyama himself was signaling in that idea of the end of history that there would be a problem, or there might be a risk. And the risk would be that liberalism did best when it had a rival. Without a rival, liberalism ran the risk of becoming intellectually flabby, lazy.
Now, that liberal order is showing signs of strain on a number of fronts. China has emerged on the world stage with its own model, eager to extend its influence. And Russia has grown increasingly assertive in the use of its military power.
Clearly, the international liberal order that was ushered in by Europe and the United States in the post-World War II period is in a crisis mode and is certainly under attack. And countries like Russia and China, but also others, see this as an opportunity to carve out a place for themselves.
The Russians worry about liberal ideology and how that might endanger Putin's government. In Iran, there's a strong sort of dislike of the American-backed order in the Middle East. And then you have Al-Qaeda, you have ISIS, and the broader movement of jihadism that rejects the kind of world that American policy has been trying to build.
The Pax Americana is definitely showing signs of strain. You can see it in Russia's invasion of Crimea. You can see it in the world's struggle to respond to transnational problems like climate change and cyber theft.
The shifting political dynamic has prompted many to wonder if Pax Americana is on the wane.
The West isn't done yet. The West is still in this fight. But clearly, there are trends and shifts in the international system that are no longer going to be centered around Western hegemony.
We've seen a great reordering of global power. The biggest story of our time has been the rise of China, certainly as an economic and military power. But there's still no question that in the modern world today, the United States is still the strongest economy, strongest military, most influential country politically.